Hello, dear friend, and welcome. I believe the single most important thing to be understood in America today is the simplest explanation for why we struggle to memorize and why we struggle to create. And that understanding is shared by Robert Fritz in his book, Your Life as Art. Most of us aren't taught about Occam's razor or Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is most always the very best explanation. So we can understand through Robert's work three principles about creating. The principles are shown by these blocks. The first principle is we must establish the mechanics for creating. The how-to, the do's and don'ts of creating. Once we understand the mechanics of creating, we then place on top of that the orientation for creating. What is it that we want to create? Once those two building blocks are established, we then have the spirit of creating. So why is the spirit of education dead in America? It's very simple. We remove the mechanics of memorizing. We no longer understand how to memorize. Instead, we're beginning with the orientation. We're telling children what to memorize. Most of that, they do not have to. They don't need to memorize. And because we're missing the mechanics, the spirit of education is dead. If we choose to establish the mechanics of memorizing first, and then once we know how hard it is, how difficult it is, the time, the focus, the energy it takes to be able to memorize and remember, then we'll better assess our orientation. What does a child or a teenager or an adult actually need to memorize to move forward? When we understand that, we can then begin to build for both memorizing and creating. I've not practiced much, but I think you might get the point. The true spirit of memorizing, the true spirit of creating, when we start with the proper foundation. The mechanics of memorizing and creating, the orientation of memorizing and creating, so that we can build upon the mechanics and the orientation. Is there a simpler explanation? I don't think so.